All right, guys, welcome. We are back. I'm so excited. I have another expert, and this is James Fisher. So I'm excited. Welcome, James.
Hello, hello. Um,
Yes, so go ahead and tell us about your service, what you do, and also I'm curious why you got into it.
my service is called Enlighten Tutors. It's a tutoring company I started about a year ago. I
Awesome.
grew up in Bronx public schools, and I saw that there was just a lot of disparity in education, a lot of resources that I did not get as a student. So I decided to create this tutoring company to address that gap, right? So we focus a lot on providing resources for students to, at the end of the day, just get into college and make sure that they're prepared for college.
Awesome. And especially with what's going on now what's been going on since March, I believe, with the pandemic, I think this is even a more important conversation. And so for those that are watching and those that are listening, that's why I had to have James come on because we need to be ready. And he's going to tell us our strategy may need to pivot. And so that's what we're going to kind of get into. And so I kind of want to start with there. We've got a pandemic going on. I'm sure you're probably being flooded with calls, probably from parents that are having to be pseudo teachers
Right.
right now, and kids that are like, do I keep preparing to apply for college? Do I take a gap year? What do you say to those families?
Well, in general, I think, this is a time where there's just a lot of stuff happening, right? There's a lot of transitions to like online everything, right? Remote everything.
Mhm.
I think the beauty of our company is that we've adapted to that change, right? Because we see that that's a need. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about our model. So our model, at least for most of the lead tutors, is that they're teachers as well. So they have that
Awesome.
experience of like, teaching in the classroom.
Hmm.
So that allows them to know certain skills that a regular tutor wouldn't know. So we normally, right, have adapted to Zoom because we teach Zoom in our classes. So when parents call me, I tell them, yeah, we're definitely up for remote. We're definitely up for in person as well, like if you're in the New York area. And we're just definitely ready to adapt to these changing times. And it can be hard, right? Because there's a lot of different resources, and it's like, where do you go? Some parents are homeschooling their kids, right? So it's really
Right.
hard to like find a centralized place where we call them clients, but like parents and their children can like get
Mhm.
access to quality education. So that's why we sort of offer our resources to help bridge in that gap that they're not getting.
And I love what you said. Some things stood out to me. First of all, is that your tutors are teachers. I think that is it's the ideal situation, right? Because I tell everybody it's a skill to teach. Like everybody doesn't wake up knowing how to teach something to a child or anybody for that matter. Yeah. So, and then also, I love the fact that, like you said, your company has adjusted because we're in a digital space. It's where we are. We don't know how long
Right.
this is going to be the norm, but I'm so glad that your company has adapted because it's right now we're not able to be in person like we used to be.
Right. And it's just a lot because like the amount of stuff teachers have to go through, right? And I'm speaking as a teacher. I teach seniors right now in high school, but
Oh,
I taught middle school before. Um,
okay.
and I taught middle school in the pandemic and then transitioned to high school. So
Wow.
teaching a lot of kids, teaching them at home when they ain't got no video on, and you keep trying to get them to turn their cameras on. Like it's just a
Hmm.
whole lot. So I definitely relate to the struggle, and a lot of our tutors relate to the struggle because they're teachers as well.
Awesome. Now, James, tell us because I didn't know you were an educator. What subject did you teach in middle school and what do you teach now?
So in middle school, I taught seventh grade ELA.
Ah,
The thing about the school that I was at is that the curriculum consisted of three parts, right? So it wasn't just like reading, it was the book, right? Reading, then there
mm-hmm.
was writing, and then there was test prep. So it was
Mm.
literally three components in one class that I had to teach periodically throughout the semester.
Wow.
Now I teach AP literature and I teach it at a high school. So I teach seniors.
Cool. And since you are an ELA teacher, I guess I have to ask this for some families that are watching. If you have a child that they're like, I don't like to read, don't like to write, how do you even start to even get through to them? What's some ways that maybe they can do that?
Well, as a teacher,
Hmm.
I didn't, I become very transparent. I tell them when I was in school, I really didn't like to read either. And because I was in a public school that really didn't, or public schools, right, that really didn't like promote that.
Hmm.
Times in class where we really read one book for the whole year, right? So
Wow.
I was really not, prepared to read, and I didn't really like it.
Hmm.
The way I approach it for my students is one, I'm transparent, and then two, I let them know that reading unlocks literacy, right? And literacy
Yes.
unlocks power, right? That's power to know how to read, to know how to like engage with the world around you. So even if you don't love to read, it's important that you gain those skills so you can apply to other areas in your life, right? As adults, we always have to read no matter if we like to read or not.
That's
So
true.
it's very important that we develop those skills. And then in terms of engagement with reading, I teach literature. So I teach fiction, and all the time I try to relate it to today's society. So for example, today we're reading, not today, this semester we're reading The Scarlet Letter. And
Oh,
normally
okay.
that's a book that's like very archaic. It's like, where do we
Hmm.
go from here? So I reminded my students, I tell them, well, this is no different than today's society, right? People cheating on each other's husbands, right? I show
Hmm.
more episodes of Maury, and I compare it, and I compare the themes in that show, in that book.
Hmm.
So I basically, just to sum it up, like I like to approach literature from a very like real world perspective, because
Hmm.
reading is an example of the human experience, right? People are literally writing about the human experience. So that's
Yes.
how we can always connect it. So I always try to be transparent and then also make those real world connections for kids.
That's awesome. And in case you guys missed it, those that are watching and listening, I like what James just said. He said that you have to connect it to the real world now. That way that way the kids can see that this is not just a school thing. This is a life thing. So that's really good. You guys need to take notes and do that. That was a really good strategies that James just shared. So, James, now for those that are watching, so the families, the students, educators that are watching, you have your educators, and the child's going to school, but they may need extra support. They may need extra academic support. So, as they're in terms of your service, when is it time for a family to engage you and bring you on or hire you on as a part of their team to support their child?
Hmm. So a lot of times when people call, like it's it's very dependent on the client. So a lot of times I can't give like a general overview of like our scheduling, because it really
Hmm.
depends on like what the parent schedule is, what the kid schedule is.
Hmm.
The fact that we are teachers does take a toll, right? In terms of the availability of our tutoring services. But for the
Hmm.
most part, we do weekends. Weekends are like the most important, right? Um,
Hmm.
if we're in person specifically, like that helps in over the weekends. We do in person on the weekdays, but that's like after we have work, right? Um,
Gotcha.
and then, so yeah, I would say generally our availability is either weekdays after we teach. Sometimes we are able to do it like in between the workday, depending on like our prep periods or whatever. We kind of squeeze it in.
Hmm.
But for the most part, it's those times and then the weekends.
Awesome. And so, if you can tell us what are students coming to you for now? Is it more so college prep? Is it a subject area like ELA, math, or reading? Like, what are they coming to you more so for now?
All over. It's all over the place.
Okay.
But I would like to say that it's, dependent on the season, right? What's the season of tests that people are taking, right? So
Hmm.
now we have clients that are doing SAT prep. Um, but we also have clients that are like preparing for January Regents exams in New York, or whatever state exams they have in their state. Um,
Hmm.
so we have geometry right now, for example. We have a client that's doing geometry. We have clients that are doing SAT subject tests. We have clients that are doing AP exam prep. So it really just depends on the period. Um,
Hmm.
I would also say that it's really yeah, it just depends on what they need. So we're not like closing off anything, because we're
Hmm.
open to like all different subjects, and we
Hmm.
have different possibilities. But for the most part, right now it's major like SAT test prep and college essays as well. We do a great service with college essays. And if you look on the website as well, right, it has a section for individualized tutoring. So that's how we like open it up. So like people don't feel
Hmm.
like oh, my service isn't there. It's like, no, you can call us, schedule a free consultation, and then we'll get you together.
And I like that because it's really, and I know you know this as a teacher, but I know it's hard in the classroom setting to do it, but a lot of students, they have their own needs. They have their own challenges and
Right.
weaknesses and all that. So I'm glad that you do offer a way where they can, and I'll have the website link. I'll have it in the show notes so everybody can get access to it. But like you said, where they can go onto your website and they can just select individual tutoring and you guys can talk and put the package together.
Right. And
Yeah.
what a great point about, different needs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of us being teachers, a lot of us also have taught in IEP integrated
Mm-hmm.
co-teaching settings. So we teach students with IEPs. I teach students with IEPs every day.
Mm-hmm.
So we also know how to differentiate. A lot of times tutors, right, don't have that education experience. So they don't know how to
Right.
differentiate kids. So the beauty as well is like on our teacher tutor model, that's what we call it, is
Mm-hmm.
that we're able to differentiate and be like, okay, like what are these students' needs? Like what is traditionally their challenges when approaching learning? And then how do we create an individualized plan? We call them pacing plans. How do we create those plans so that it fits their needs and it's not just like a generic tutoring curriculum, for example?
Right. And I like that model because, for some students, I guess unfortunately, the traditional classroom environment and setting, they just need more support. And so for you guys, I love that model because you've got teachers, they're experienced, like you said, they work with students with IEPs and other challenges. So they bring that wealth of knowledge, to your clients. So I think it's a great model. But since you mentioned about SAT prep and ACT prep, do you think students should still be preparing right now, or do they wait, to see what's going on with the pandemic? How should they navigate that?
I would say continue to prep, right? I know for seniors it's a little bit more difficult because they have the December SAT scheduled, but
Mm-hmm.
who knows what will happen. But I do have a client right now that I work with that is preparing for that December SAT, but he also took the November one yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
just in case. But I would say for folks who are not seniors and have a little bit more time, definitely take advantage and do the prep. And then the SAT is, still there. It's still active. Even though, there are some things with schools not um, considering it because of COVID and other things. But I would
Mm-hmm.
still say to take it because a lot of those schools are still test optional, right? So you can still submit the test. So, why not prepare for it? And then decide after you have the scores, like, okay, is this something I want to submit or not? But definitely I would take advantage of the resources and I would take advantage of them earlier. So not just senior year. Senior year, we definitely accept seniors and we have we have data that shows our growth, like we do bring them up, right? But
Mm-hmm.
imagine a 10th grader or an 11th grader like doing this for like 2 years almost. Like that's going to have more impact than,
Mm-hmm.
senior just doing it months before.
I agree. For everybody that's watching and listening, what James just said is so key. Is if you start early enough, what I call taking that proactive approach.
Right.
Because since we can't control the end of the pandemic, this is what we can control. Is you guys can reach out and hire James and his team, and that's what we can control is getting that score up.
Right.
So
And also
yes, I.
that's the idea of like proactivity in general with any type of tutoring, not just test prep. Like a lot of times, sadly to say, people don't see tutoring as like a necessity when in reality you have kids that are in these wealthy private schools, right? They have tutoring since they was 9, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that their family ingrained in them, right? Versus urban communities like the ones that I grew up in, right? And black communities, brown communities, like
Mm-hmm.
that's not seen as a necessity because parents are just like, well, I have a whole bunch of other stuff that we got to do, right? And that's fine. But I also stress to my clients like tutoring is essential because you need sort of that individualized attention, even if you're doing like, an hour a week, right? Doing a specific subject, like that
Mm-hmm.
helps and that will like show major improvement in kids' scores and kids' grades versus doing it last minute. And I think that we just need to shift our perspective, because at the end of the day, like I said, these rich private school parents and a lot of these white parents, in these rich private schools, they're doing work. So why not we do it and gain access to the same resources?
I agree, and just listen to what you just said is so important. We have to. I'm saying for the minority communities, like you said, the Black and Brown families especially, we have to consider this or see this as an investment, just like you invest in, your future purchase of something. Whether it be a home, car, whatever. We need to add tutoring like to the budget line.
Definitely.
We do, because especially now, like you said, with the test optional, colleges is so competitive now. And I know you also mentioned too about you guys help with college essays. That admission essay is even more so important now, because a lot of students, are choosing to hold off on the testing.
Right. And that causes them to like raise the bar, right, in terms of
Yes,
competition. And then it's like, well, you still need tutoring, even if it's not test prep, right? Because
still do.
you make sure your students are even more competitive, right? So
I agree. And, for those also, and James, you can, I'm sure, attest to this because we went to college, we already finished our degrees. But
yeah.
also for those that are listening, this is another reason why you need to reach out to James and his team, is because those entrance exams, and I don't mean SAT, ACT, but once you get into a school, when you test for your ELA and math, if you don't score high enough, you're taking a remedial class, not counting towards graduation. And that's taking money out of either your pocket or mom and dad's or somebody's. It's having to pay for that. So I'd rather you guys get the help now. That way your skills are where they need to be.
Awesome. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, and so I kind of want to end with this, is now with your services. So talk to us more about how you help with the college essays. I think that is huge right now. And also tell us also about, I know you mentioned you have an individual tutoring,
Yep.
and tell us if you have any other packages for the college prep.
Okay, cool. So let's start with college essays. So college essays is actually what I started with as a tutor before I started the company. So I've been tutoring since I was in college professionally. So I did various tutoring platforms like Varsity Tutors and all that. And I also did my own like private, one-to-one tutoring. That was my first thing. So college essays is like my baby. I call it my baby.
Okay.
So everything college essays, I love it. I love talking to individual students and getting more information about their lives too, right? Because the idea is you want to portray a specific part of your life, your experience, to college admissions representatives, right? So the idea is to make sure that you have a story, not that's like the most in terms of what people want to hear, right? But what's the story that is going to fully communicate what you want to communicate to those officers, right? And then they can
That's good.
your life,
Mm-hmm.
So that's in terms of the essays. In terms of other resources, we do offer, we offered a lot of it in the summer, but we still offer it now. We offer like little package deals where we have like a week-long course of like college prep, right? So like, what do you need to know in terms of financial aid? What do you need to know in terms of college essays is also embedded in that week course. What do you need to know about life after college, right? I mean, life in college, sorry. So we have resources there as well. And then to go into the individualized tutoring part, that is just the way, like I said earlier, for folks to like create their own niche plan. So it's not like they have to like look at the options and be like, oh, I'm only stuck with one option. So with any of the services, you have to schedule a consultation call anyways, right, to get more information. But the individualized tutoring is niche because it allows you to address like your individual child's needs, and make sure that, we're addressing those needs and we're not doing something, like I said, very generic, like a lot of tutoring companies and a lot of tutors do. They just do like, okay, we're doing this type of prep and we're doing it in this way. It's like, no, like, let's say Sarah, right? We're going to have a plan for you that once a week we're going to do SAT prep, but this is how we're going to break it down. If your math score is low, we're going to focus a lot on that math score. And then we're still going to use the, reading and writing sections. We're going to go through those, but we're really going to focus on that math score because that's what you need, right? To like boost up. So not like, oh, day one we do reading, day two we do writing. It's like, no, we may do reading for 2 weeks, right?
Mhm.
Depends on their needs. So yeah.
That is awesome. I love that. The fact that you guys personalize it because like you said, I've seen some of the, I'll call them the bigger name, like tutoring companies, and
Yeah.
they have that set plan. Like you said, day one is this, whether you need it or not. It's like day two. So, and guys, that's why say it again.
Oh, and it's like, why am I paying for that then? Like, I want something
Exactly.
specific, you know?
Exactly. And so, like I said, guys that are again listening and watching, that's why I had to bring James on because I wanted you guys to see, some and his team, they're experienced educators and they're skilled at this, being able to, work with a child and see what those challenges are, I guess in a diagnostic kind of way,
Mhm.
and able to help them focus on that and turn that weakness into a strength. So I highly encourage everybody, again, that's watching and listening, reach out to James. Again, I'll have his company's information in the show notes, so you'll be able to access that. James, I'm going to let you take us out of here. Any final words of wisdom or anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, I just want to say that like this is my, bread and butter. This is my passion. It's something I love. And yeah, I just love filling in those gaps, right? The education gap in America is ridiculous. And we need
Yes.
something, we need some kind of system to like break that gap and like really have it be equitable because it's not fair that people who have, large amounts of money, go to these private schools since they were young,
Mm-hmm.
have access when you know, we can do the same thing, right? We just got to create that investment, like you said, and really like hone in and be like, okay, like this is where we want to go and this is how we're going to get there. Um, and yeah, and the other thing I wanted to add too is that, our pricing is a little lower than the top companies, right? So you have top tutoring companies doing like, 200 an hour and all these expensive prices. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, also try to make it, you know, affordable to some extent. Like obviously, like we also have to make a living, so it's not going to be like super dirt cheap. But
Mm-hmm.
we try to like provide some kind of middle ground. We also do discounts as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, James, thank you so much. I'm definitely going to have you back on. We're going to do like a post-COVID kind of chit chat and see if you have some different strategies for us if we need to pivot back to normal